All right, let's dive into an analysis from Aquavis Advisors that takes a really fascinating look at the first 6 months of the Trump agenda. It poses a big question. What if everything that looked and felt like total chaos was actually a meticulously calculated plan?
You probably remember it, right? The constant stream of headlines, the policy shifts that seemed to come out of nowhere, the moves that just felt unpredictable. It was a lot. But the central question this analysis asks is, was it really just chaos, or was there a deliberate strategy at play, hidden just beneath the surface? Well, the argument we're going to explore today is that this feeling of chaos wasn't an accident at all. In fact, it was an intentional part of the plan. The idea is that behind all that noise, there was a very clear order, a step-by-step strategy being rolled out. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll unpack this whole idea of chaos by design. Then we'll dig into the three core foundations of the agenda, what the source calls the pillars of power. That's technology, energy, and money. And finally, we'll see how these pillars were designed to snap together to create what the analysis calls a new system. Okay, first step, chaos by design. So if there is a hidden order to all of this, how in the world do we actually see it? The source argues you need a specific framework, a new lens to filter out all the noise and start connecting the dots. And that framework is called the Pillars of Power. It's a pretty simple but really powerful concept. It basically says that modern geopolitical power, true global influence, rests on three things that are all linked together: mastering technology, securing tons of energy, and controlling the flow of money. According to this analysis, every single major policy move in those first 6 months can be mapped right back to strengthening one or even all three of these pillars. We're going to start with the first and, according to this analysis, the most important pillar of all, technology. And the focus here is laser sharp. It's all about the race to dominate artificial intelligence. The argument is that everything else in the agenda flows from winning this one critical race. And when you look at the timeline they lay out, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. I mean, this doesn't look random at all. On day one, boom, an executive order on AI leadership. A month later, identifying critical technologies. Then came the tariffs, which we'll get to in a second. That led to legislation with new incentives, and it all built up to a national AI action plan. The analysis presents this as a rapid-fire, completely logical sequence of events. Now, let's talk about those tariffs for a second, because the analysis here claims they were way more than just a simple trade tool. They were framed as a disruptive catalyst, a shock to the system, with a bunch of goals: a wake-up call to the world, a mirror to what it calls unfair trade, a way to start rebalancing things, a revenue tool, and maybe most critically, a mechanism to force the manufacturing for the AI supply chain to come back home. The analysis highlights quotes like this one from Vladimir Putin to really drive home how urgent this was. The stakes in the AI race aren't just about the economy. They're seen as being about the future global balance of power. And the argument goes that because America's adversaries see it this way, the U.S. strategy had to be aggressive and immediate. There was no time to waste. And right here, the analysis lays out this clear cause and effect chain. It shows how these policy signals from the government were like firing a starting gun for the private sector. The hyperscalers, the big tech companies, ramped up their spending, which directly led to a massive build-out of data centers and a huge acceleration in building semiconductor factories right here in the U.S. The government set the direction and the private sector hit the gas. But here's the thing about this AI revolution. It has a massive appetite. Building and running all those data centers and chip fabs takes an absolutely incredible amount of power. And that leads us directly to the second pillar, energy. Because you just can't win the technology race if you can't keep the lights on. The policy shift described here is, well, it's a complete 180. The analysis contrasts what it calls the old focus, which it claims demonized production and piled on regulations, with the new one. The new approach is characterized by phrases like drill, baby, drill, and a huge focus on fast-tracking permits and prioritizing national energy dominance. The goal was simple: abundant, reliable, and low-cost energy. And the analysis uses this quote from NVIDIA CEO to really connect the dots for us. It makes the point that the growth of AI is physically, literally limited by how much energy is available. It just couldn't be clearer. This is why, according to the source, securing the energy pillar wasn't just a good idea, it was an absolute necessity for achieving the goals of the technology pillar. So, following that same pattern we saw with technology, the analysis points to a whole series of really decisive actions. You had the declaration of a national energy emergency, pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, investigations into mineral supply chains, and a big renewed push for nuclear power, all supported by public-private partnerships. Every single move was designed to bust through bottlenecks and ramp up the domestic supply of power.
Okay, so you have a plan for technology and a plan for energy, but how do you pay for all of this? I mean, this is a massive undertaking. This brings us to the third and final pillar, money. And the strategy wasn't just about finding money, but about fundamentally changing where capital flows in the entire economy. This slide here really illustrates the fundamental shift the analysis is talking about. It explains that for a long time, a lot of foreign capital flowed into U.S. financial assets, things like stocks and bonds. The new strategy was designed to grab that fire hose of money and point it somewhere else entirely. Instead of financial paper, the goal was to channel that cash directly into productive assets, the actual physical factories, data centers, and power plants needed to make the other two pillars a reality.
And the scale of this redirection is just staggering. We're not talking about a small change. The analysis tallies over $7 trillion in committed investments from corporations and international allies, all of it earmarked for building out the physical backbone of America's new tech and energy sectors. This was a tidal wave of capital being told to change direction. The source uses this pretty provocative question to make its point crystal clear. It's really an argument for getting back to basics. The idea is that an economy's real strength comes from its ability to make real things: food, shelter, energy, security. So this huge shift in capital was about prioritizing investment in that real-world capacity over what it frames as just unproductive financial speculation. So we have the three pillars: technology as the main prize, energy as the power source, and money as the fuel for the engine. Now let's see how the analysis shows them all combining to create what it calls the new system. So, what is this new system? Well, the analysis defines it as a strategic realignment of the world order, one that's based on American leadership in key technologies, that prioritizes investment in real, productive things, and creates a structure where allies can choose to opt in to a system that's designed for mutual growth, all built around these three pillars of power. This chart from the analysis shows how it's all designed to fit together, creating what it calls a virtuous cycle. Technology is the main race you have to win, which boosts national security and productivity. That tech is powered by the energy pillar, and both of them are financed by the money pillar, which is now aimed squarely at these productive investments. Each pillar just makes the other stronger. It's a feedback loop. So underneath all that surface-level chaos, the analysis argues there was a clear four-step playbook at work. Step 1, lay out a vision. Step 2, use a catalyst, like the tariffs, to break the old system. Step 3, use that disruption to open up a new dialogue and make new deals. And finally, Step 4, use those new deals to build the new system. And the analysis closes with this quote from the president, which pretty much sums up the ultimate ambition of the entire strategy. This wasn't just about friendly economic competition. The stated goal was unquestioned and unchallenged global technological dominance, and it was framed as nothing less than a national security imperative. So, chaos or a calculated strategy? The analysis from Aquavis Advisors makes a really compelling case for the second option. It argues that if you use this framework of technology, energy, and money, the actions of those first 6 months start to look like a very coherent plan to reshape the global order. It definitely offers a new lens for understanding those events and maybe a whole new set of questions for what comes next.